to move into our next session. For the next session, we have a poll question that we would like the audience to answer. So if everybody could please refresh their browser, the poll should then come up and we would ask you to please provide your response to the first question there. So we'll give you a few minutes to do that as we transition to our next session. So please refresh your browser and hopefully the poll comes up. And the first question should be, what type of organization are you representing? And there are a couple options there, so if you could pick the one that applies the best to you. It'll be helpful for our panelists. They're hoping to tailor some of their responses to the audience that we're speaking to and to some of their unique challenges that they're facing. So we will let those responses roll in, and as you are answering the questions from the poll, I will introduce you to our panelists. So this is our final panel discussion of the conference, and it's an extremely important topic. We're talking about donor engagement here, especially important because of the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. So we're going to talk to our panelists today about how their organizations are finding ways to drive their missions forward despite all of the obstacles that they are facing. So I'm really pleased to welcome today Jody Steinhauer, who's the President and Chief Bargain Officer at Bargains Group. She also is a serial entrepreneur, and I'm sure she'll tell you a little bit more about all of her endeavors in our little introduction. We have Kathy Koch, who is the Director of Corporate, Individual, and Foundation Giving at Woodgreen Community Services, and we have Lauren Ott, who is the Chief Kits Officer at Kits for a Cause. So thank you all so much for being here today. So I'm just trying to take a look at the poll now to see what our results are showing. And I am not seeing them just quite yet, but we'll wait for those to roll in. And it works well, actually, because our first question for our panelists is just asking them all to briefly introduce themselves. They all know each other quite well, and they work very closely together. So we thought that it would be good for them to tell us about the work that they're doing and how they all interact with one another. So we'll start first with Kathy, and then we'll go to Jody, and then to Lauren. So Kathy, why don't you kick us off?
Thanks so much, Rebecca. Really appreciate the opportunity to be here today, especially with two wonderful individuals that I'm privileged to work with on the regular. So I'm Kathy, and I'm from the Woodgreen Foundation, and we support Woodgreen Community Services. So for those of you who may not know, Woodgreen Community Services is one of the largest social service organizations in the city of Toronto. And so my job is as Director of Individual, Corporate, and Foundation Giving. Basically, that entails everything except for government funding. And so as you ask questions and we go through this process, feel free to sort of touch on any of these things. Woodgreen works with over 40,000 people annually. So that might be single moms struggling with homelessness and their children, seniors living independently, hopefully, and out of hospital, keeping them out of hospital for longer, and then even youth aging out of the foster care system. Really a wide spectrum of individuals focusing on housing and homelessness, community and health, and financial empowerment. And some of our most transformational programs take a little bit from each of those. So that's Woodgreen in a nutshell. And I'll turn it over to, I think, Rebecca, who's next? Jody?
Jody.
Wonderful.
Great. Kathy, I learn something from you every day. Hi, everybody. I'm Jody, and I am the Chief Bargain Officer and founder of a discount wholesale company in Toronto. We're a national company, and if you like to buy things at a big discount by the case, that's what Bargains Group does. We have one stream that supplies retail stores across the country, which we started 32 years ago. My passion is supplying discounted, desperately needed supplies to people like Kathy. Charities are struggling, and if they come to the Bargains Group, their dollar can go 3 to 4 times as far on top of massive donations. People like Kathy broke my heart 22 years ago because they had this many clients and that much money. So I started a love project, which now is a charity called Engage and Change. And we get together groups of people, families, corporate leaders, schools to come together 2 times a year. 2 huge events, Project Winter Survival, where we pack $500,000 worth of survival kits for people sleeping on the streets. 240 agencies and shelters get these donated in January, and Project Water in the summertime so nobody dies of dehydration. And the last part of our journey was so many people loved this whole group volunteer with impact, roll up your sleeves, let's just do something, that they kept asking me, and they had this great problem. They had clients with money, or they had money, but they didn't know the charities and were the experts in kit packing. So I turned to people and said, let's just do it. So we started Kits for a Cause, which I'm proud to say Lauren Odd is the champion of it, and I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. So I can dive in. Hi, everyone. My name is Lauren. And so I was connected to Jody as a very frustrated director of business development for a large national nonprofit. And I continued to get that dreaded phone call. And that dreaded phone call might actually be from some of the people who are here in the audience today. And you don't know that you're causing the dreaded phone call to nonprofits, but it's the idea of, Kathy, great news. We've chosen you for Give Back Day. And we've got 60 people who want to show up next Thursday, and we printed t-shirts, and we are so excited. What are we going to do? And inside, Kathy is saying, oh my God, we've got nothing for you to do. Because nonprofits and social service agencies are set up to support their clients, but they don't necessarily have the engagement tools, mechanisms, and programs that are set up to properly engage individuals, companies, and groups of people all across the country at any given time. There are many programs that, of course, have very specific needs, but oftentimes it's over a length of time, and there's proper training that's involved, and background checks and proper screening. And so what I did was I left my last gig of being the director of development, and I said, Jody, I want to take this on, and I'm selfishly going to solve my past issue. So instead, what Kits for a Cause is doing is we are serving up on a silver platter donors who are engaged, who are informed about your programs, but also who are so excited and become champions and ambassadors of the amazing work that the charities are doing. So we are a matchmaker for good and continue to find different ways to make the biggest impact possible, and not just an impact on the actual charity and client side, but also on the individuals who are looking to make a difference.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much for providing an overview of your roles. So I'm just getting the poll results here on my phone. So it looks like the majority of our audience members are representing not-for-profit organizations. So that's the result of the first poll. We'll try and get the second poll up. So keep that in your mind as you answer this next question. I'd love to hear, and I'm sure the audience would as well, what some of your unique approaches are to donor engagement. And so Jody, I know that you have some fairly unique strategies that we've talked about, and I'd love to hear first from you, and then we'll have Lauren and Kathy add what they have to say after that. So you go ahead, Jody.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to talk as the executive director of Engage and Change, always trying to find donors to come out to our events, especially during COVID when you can't have an event, right? And how do I get money? Because there are items that I don't get donated that I have to purchase, but how do I engage the donor and make it really worthwhile for them too? So what we found out is people are really, really excited to give back and roll up their sleeves and help people. They're much more reluctant about than writing that check. But people like us, we need still some money. So it's all about, what is going to make the donor happy and what are they looking for? And it's really asking that question and understanding what they are. Sometimes it's employee engagement. Sometimes it's increasing their profile for whatever reason, for recruitment, retention of people. Sometimes they're looking to spice up something to win an award. And sometimes it's just to go along with their CSR strategy that they belong to. There's always something. So once I understand what that is, Then I can say, well, we've got this incredible event. You can bring so many people to the event. You can actually pack the kits. Here's where the kits are going. This is what the experience is like. And let me tell you how to do marketing and social media around it. And that's what a lot of charities don't do well. Let me tell you how you can really leverage this donation to elevate yourselves above your competitors. Because on the other hand, I'm the president of a company. And I can say to them, people do business with a bargains group because of the philosophies and give back that we do. And I can show them the examples of where we profile the work we do in charities and how it's leveraged us to win business, to win employees. And that's what a lot of donors aren't doing. So I want to encourage charities to talk to me about that, because it's a really good dirty secret to talk to people and explain to them you can talk about it without being boastful, and people aren't doing it enough.
It's the art of the humble brag.
The humble, yes.
So I'll go next to you, Lauren, and before you answer, we do have the results of the second poll question, which is, what is your organization's biggest obstacle currently? So just keeping that in mind as you answer this question. And it's a pretty even split between funding and finding donors. So do with that information what you will as you discuss your approach to donor engagement.
Perfect. I think at the end of the day, when approaching a donor, I think oftentimes fundraisers and individuals who are in charge of either donor engagement or donor prospecting, they're oftentimes looking outside of their current network. But what we need to remember is we've created a really incredible program that not only can you engage people, but there's also champions within your program. So it's not just you as the individual who's fundraising for the charity or the nonprofit that needs to be advocating for you, but instead you have board members, you have existing donors who also have networks. And so I think what's really important is find ways to find different pieces of engagement and connection points to existing donors in order to grow within their network, because you're not always having to start fresh, but instead it could even just be asking a donor who currently is engaged, currently is a huge champion in terms of funding, but even just asking them for a small favor to introduce you to one of their contacts. And I think in that idea, if you find different pinpoints and different pulse points to connect with donors, and every pulse is not, hey, can we get another check? Hey, can we get another check? But instead it's asking for advice. It's asking, who should we be connected to? Who in your network would benefit from this type of engagement, and who can we help? That is so key, and that is so important. And so I think oftentimes we're always looking for the next biggest, brightest, fastest growing company, but instead of looking first outside of your donors and instead of prospecting, focus inside and understand, who do you have within your network that you can create net worth with, and then flip it. And I think what's really important in that idea is, once you understand what that is, having an ask ready to go isn't necessarily the best way to do it. So what Jody just mentioned is so key. So understanding how you can become that strategic business partner to that individual, that person, that organization, that's so important, because there are so many different ways and so many different reasons why people connect with a nonprofit space. So like Jody said, it might be that feel good, it might be that CSR point, but it also might be working on an issue within their culture. It might be understanding, how are they creating a legacy as a family foundation? There are so many different reasons and priorities that people have. And I think oftentimes we assume without asking. And so asking is really important, but also looking within your existing donor space is really key.
Can I add to that, Rebecca?
Yes, please.
So because I sometimes I'm an executive director of a starving charity, sometimes an entrepreneur and a president of a company, and sometimes I'm a scrounger for donations in different ways. I wear different hats, and I was blessed to have the mentor, Ed Mervish. And when I'm in a business mode, one of the strategies that I use that he taught me was, like Lauren talked about, leveraging your network. So we have a program in our company that I buy a lot of products. So this morning I bought 45,000 pairs of men's underwear. Okay. This afternoon I'm working on brand name ski gloves, right? Kathy gives me a list of what she needs and all the shelters do across Canada. My job's to go find it and get a great price. I'm not shy when I say to someone, I just bought underwear from you. Do you want to get paid in 30, 60, or 90 days? Because if you give me some donations for my full circle donation program or for Engage and Change, I'm happy to pay you quicker. If you don't give me donations, it's okay. But if someone else has the same priced underwear, I'll be buying from them. And that's a ballsy way of saying, you know what? You help me, I'll help you. And I think that as business leaders, if you have that leverage in your network, don't be shy in asking, with respect, but don't be shy.
Yeah.
Well, I think that leads into a little bit of something I was going to say here. And those are all really, really great points. If we're looking at some of the funding challenges that we've had over the past year, what I would also say is that, partnering with folks, just like you've been talking about how we often partner with Bargains Group and Kids for a Cause, which has for us proven to be a really neat way to build our relationships with the corporate sector as well. So for anybody who's out there trying to figure out how can we build our donor base and then how can we get the word out on a budget, I'm in social service. Obviously, we very rarely have any funds for marketing or anything like that.
There's never a budget.
There's never, right? So, so we have to be very creative. And so when we look at sort of those volunteers, like Lauren was talking about, folks coming and they want to participate in a really tangible way. And that's so difficult because we're stretched thin as it is. We want to make sure we keep the clients front and center, and that impact something like a kitting event has ended up being a really neat way to have like a first engagement point with a bunch of folks who may not have known about Woodgreen before. So let's say they decide to do that. That might kind of wedge open the door for further conversations, both with individuals who might want to volunteer for Woodgreen or for, more engagement from the corporate side of the equation. And so, and we try to ask all of these folks to help us and shout out to us on social and learn more and follow us and all of that. So that's a really interesting way when you're looking at corporate engagement to be able to start conversations with folks you might not have had access to. And so that's one thing. And then having those partners, it might not just be with the volunteers or the employee engagement side. Maybe there's something else that you can do. So Woodgreen has been really trying to leverage our scope and our size in Toronto to be able to say, you know what, we're going to take a stand on some of the issues that have always been here, but maybe have been exacerbated by COVID. And we've got this $20 million campaign going on right in the middle of COVID, which is fun. But definitely something where we're saying, you know what, poverty is a key issue. Like Jody said, she started this organization, 25 years ago? Was that, what did you say?
32, but yeah.
32 years ago. These issues are not going away. And what we have to do is realize that, the same solutions that might have worked in the past are not able to work today. We have to be creative. We have to spin the issue on its head and look to see how can we solve these problems. And I think that when you look at partnerships, that's really how it's going to happen. It's going to be government working with nonprofits, working with corporate, working with individuals, working with private foundations, working with everybody together. And we really have to approach it that way and say, like, what can each of us bring to the table? So, for example, we've been looking at, how does our board and their connections and the introductions they can make help us to start a conversation about development and affordable housing, and how can we get that out and amplified in a way that doesn't necessarily cost us any money, but gets the Woodgreen name out there, gets the issue out there, and really kind of gets us thinking in a kind of a different creative way. And so I know I'm sort of spinning what we're saying and putting both of these things together, but I think you can get more attention on your issues, more awareness about your name and kind of what you're facing if you bring some of those other folks to the table. Now, I don't know if that answers the question about trying to get more funding, so feel free to rein us back in, Rebecca, and I'm not sure if we've got any questions already. No, that's great, and yes, you do have a question, and it actually feeds nicely into our next planned question, but I think that it's important to recap, what we've just heard
from the three of you before we go to our next question. And so the importance of listening to your partners, of leveraging your existing network, of developing meaningful relationships, being creative, and being ballsy but with respect. I really like that one. So the next question that we wanted to talk about today is how has this approach to donor engagement changed or supported you during the recent challenges as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic? And then our audience question is somewhat related, asking for recommendations for donor re-engagement.
Right.
Lots have dropped off since COVID. So maybe if you could touch on that. Lauren, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know what, donor fatigue and donor re-engagement, that's one of the most stressful things when it comes to donor engagement as a whole. And of course, COVID has only strained it. So the same way that Kathy mentioned from a social service perspective, and I don't need to inform anyone here on this call, but the cracks that existed in society have only widened. So the pandemic has only exposed to everyone, and you know what? I see it as an opportunity. So although it means that there are more people in need, there are more people requiring resources, and there are and will be more people who will continue to require resources over a long period of time, I think what the pandemic has done is it's opened up individuals and community groups and reminded them the importance of these institutions. And so I think when we're looking at lapsed donors and donor engagement and donor fatigue as a whole, those same issues that existed before the pandemic, again, are only getting worse because reporting can't happen in the same way. And we now have this upcoming generation that doesn't cut checks the same way that their parents or their grandparents did previously. And there's a requirement of transparency, and rightfully so, but there's a requirement of transparency that then comes into question of, well, where is this funding going? And maybe I don't want to give money in the same way that I used to. And so I think what we've learned and what we've seen during the pandemic is that we need to be able to be accessible, we need to be able to pivot, and we need to be able to find innovative ways to solve these really big issues. And so what we've done through Kits for a Cause, and I'm going to use Woodgreen as an example because we have Kathy here, but we do this all across the country with any type of cause. So it could be homelessness, it could be women's empowerment or violence against women shelters, it could be youth programming, it could be education, it could be animals, it could be anything. We've done, Jody and I laugh and say, we've done kidney dialysis kits. So we can do any type of kit or cause. But I think what we've learned over the past 2 years of officially launching Kits for a Cause program and unofficially before through the charity is that why Kits for a Cause works really well in terms of donor engagement is it continues to offer ways that we can answer those priorities and those needs of the donor. So Kathy is a great example. Kathy had a partner who was interested in learning more and working more with Woodgreen, and they were going to be hosting a trade booth at a big event. So it's not a traditional employee engagement event. It's not their CSR give back strategy, but instead they want to be the biggest, sexiest booth at this trade show. And so what we did was we worked in partnership with them to understand, what do you want to get out of this? What do you need? Do you need leads? Do you need sales out of this? What do you need? And so for them, it was to elevate themselves as a brand that continues to find ways to innovate and give back to the communities that they're active in. And it's also to create these neighborhood partnerships with incredible organizations like Woodgreen. And so I don't know if I'm allowed to name the corporate donor, so I won't, but instead, what I will say is their booth was a hit, and they had an incredible amount of interest, they had an incredible amount of success, but it also wasn't the traditional type employee engagement, corporate meets charity, give back day, everyone has this rah moment and then goes home. No, instead it was, what's your priority? Your priority is sales? Great, let's make it happen. Because what we've seen is that in terms of engagement, whether you're deciding between swag that you're giving out or if you're deciding between going bowling or axe throwing, it doesn't matter. If you do something meaningful as a team to come together to solve an issue, and there's this component of give back, it will always be the right activity and we can always make it work. And so I think what this tangent means is that engagement has to understand what's the priority, and engagement from a charitable partner perspective, you need to understand your donors' priorities the same way that they need to understand what your priorities are coming up for the year too. So if Kathy's launched a $20 million campaign, every single donor on her list needs to understand what that campaign means to them, how they fit into it, and she needs to understand what that means to them as well. So it's really this reciprocal relationship, and so often we're so used to having to give donors things and give donors things, but instead it's actually taking a step back and understanding what can we do together, how can we connect, and how can we make this really symbiotic that it makes sense. Build it into a contract so that way it's locked in from a donor fatigue and dropping off perspective, so you don't have to worry about that, but also understanding what is it that you're looking to get out of it. Because if you create that stickiness with your partner, with your donor, if it's easier to keep you than it is to get rid of you, you will never have to worry about a donor dropping off ever again.
Yeah, I would agree. And I was going to say, Lauren, why don't you share, when you did this trade show, which was really cool, it was all about booking appointments for this organization. And we gave them a sales strategy for free on how to reach out to the candidates to come in and book an appointment and pack kits in the booth. And they were swarmed and everybody wanted to know what's going on in that booth. And at the end of it, Lauren, how many hygiene kits did we end up making? Do you remember? It was unbelievable.
Kathy is probably still pulling hygiene kits out of her storage closets.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. And we couldn't give Kathy $20 million, but we gave her a great new donor on a silver platter that we did the first date. They were so locked in. They had such great positivity that they decided they're going to do it every single year. And then Kathy gets to wine and dine them and take them to the next level. So that's the amazing partnership. Kathy calls us, and not-for-profits across Canada during COVID, to answer your question, Rebecca, what the reason it's changed is we can't necessarily get the large corporations. They're not allowing their people to come together and pack kits because of obvious reasons. So asking the donors again, what are you looking for? What are you looking for? Lauren and I have figured out, in a lot of cases, we now have virtual kit packs. And whether it be a company, a corporation, a bank. And what's really exciting, because we're in the grassroots level, in the last 2 weeks, we cannot tell you how many families, faith-based organizations have said, like, I usually volunteer at the local food bank or my hospital or the shelter. They won't let me in, but I really want to help them. So we've actually seen an increase in donors. Why? Because we ask the questions and we listen, and then we've come up with a very simple, tangible solution. Lauren and I say all the time, we broker goodness. Really, that's what we get to do every day. We get to broker goodness. And I always say we've Uberized the event. I will tell people, if you think a donor or a volunteer wants to spend 3 or 4 hours with your not-for-profit, they don't have that time anymore. But if you can give them an awesome rock star experience, 5-star experience in 1 hour, and deal with everything for them, they're in. And then our job is to say to them, why don't you do it for the next 5 or 10 years? Because they could really use the help. And when we tell them that and we seed that for people like Kathy and all the other not-for-profits, Lauren, how many times do they say no?
Never.
Never. I mean, it's really like, if someone actually says no when they call us, Lauren, they're like, what happened? We're
personally offended.
We're personally offended. So we are blown away that people are finding out about this crazy Uberized group volunteer philanthropy experience through Google. That's it. So it's free. It's unbelievable. So it's really exciting. And through COVID, where we got really nervous, the first couple of weeks when it's a good thing it slowed down for a bit, because we were distributing PPE across Canada to everybody. We were a little busy. But the great news is it's actually increased. We at the charity Engage and Change, we've never seen so many donors in 22 years. And that's a great thing. People want to help you, not-for-profits. The problem is they go to your website, they don't see a link for a group volunteer experience. If you don't have that link up there, they're not calling you. They're just going to another charity. And half the time they're finding me at Engage and Change, and then I bring them back to Kathy and people like that. So it's about simplicity, speed, and making it impactful and easy.
Well, and one thing that you said in there especially was, you know, you have the group or the different folks who are involved. There's a social proof element, which is really nice, I think. And so that's one thing to touch on, particularly sort of circling back to the lapsed donor question would be, you know, if one thing that we've seen is in the last year or so, through COVID even, we're re-engaging more of our lapsed donors than we had previously. So just like Jody was saying, she's getting an increase in number of donors. We have really tried to step up our communications on the level of need that we're seeing, the anticipated and, you know, obviously current greater need that exists owing to COVID and this new reality. So just making sure that, you know, it's not the quantity of communications, it's really the quality of the communications that seem to be effective just with our donors. I can't speak with any, you know, every sort of organization has different sort of things that may be challenges or opportunities for them. But what we've seen is that, you know, getting strategic communications out, even if it's infrequent, but if we tell the story, this is what's happening, this is the need, this is the impact that we're having, this is the problem we're trying to solve, these are the creative ways we're trying to do it in an innovative and totally different way, that has kind of resonated with some folks who had maybe fallen off from us in the past. So we've actually seen a lot of folks kind of come back into the circle because of these, and they've identified that the reason is some of these communications that we've been able to do. And again, we don't have a lot of capacity in terms of either the time, the funds, or even the personnel to be able to do this very often. But when we do it, we want to make sure that we're being impactful. And again, I know that we are tight on time, so I do want to be conscious of that for the next question. But if anybody does feel like they want to talk to me or contact me from that perspective, then I'm happy to have conversations after as well. But just getting back over to Rebecca, I'm not sure, do we have some other questions that we can get to before the end of this? I don't know.
I think so. So there's nothing else from the audience, but we do kind of have one sort of wrap-up question that I'd still like to pose to the three of you, because I do think that it's a good way to end, which is just any final pieces of advice for the audience on how they might think about developing new strategies for fundraising, finding new donors, engagement, really just driving their mission forward. It seems like we have a wealth of knowledge here, and so I think it would be really valuable for our participants.
Oh, I want to go first. It's because I forgot to mention something. Actually, it ties in a little bit to the lab donors, but I'll flip it over to you, Jody, right after this.
You go first. You go first.
But what I was going to say is, again, we've tried so many things during the course of COVID. Like, I can't even say, you know, we've done a virtual run from the annual donors perspective. We've, you know,
that's my type of run. A virtual one.
Right. And then, you know, we're doing different things in terms of trying to, you know, outreach and get introductions to sort of our major gift donors, corporate engagement, obviously doing that in a totally different way. We created a Young Leaders Council, which has been absolutely incredible because we want to get the next generation of young professionals engaged in donating. And so I'm really passionate about this, but we've seen that group bring in about 300 new people to our organization over just the last year that this has been created. So that's been absolutely incredible. And then we've got, we just sort of reimagined monthly giving as Subscribe for Good. So that is a way that we're also reaching out to those LAP donors who might think, oh, I have to give this huge amount, and that might not be comfortable right now. But what I can do in the meantime is I can actually say, yeah, I can do $10 a month or something like that. And we're calling it Subscribe for Good. So it's sort of like a subscription. If you could subscribe for, you know, one of those television or film subscriptions that you get on your computer, you could very easily also subscribe for something good. And so that's kind of a neat thing that we did. But those kinds of creative things of saying, like, who listening to your audience, who are you trying to target? How can you sort of speak their language? What will resonate? And then how can you connect them with impact, which again is, this is exactly why we work with Kids for Cause so closely. Throwing it over to Jody.
All right, thank you. So you touched on some things, so I'm gonna go outside. First thing, if you're a not-for-profit on the call, okay, please go to kidsforacause.com. It's free. And if you're not doing it, why aren't you doing it? right? We're bringing you brand new donors. We're bringing you people. We're bringing you money. We're bringing you donations. So please go and sign up right away. If you're in the money business and you're a foundation or you're an investment person and you have clients, human beings right now are starving for connection, okay? And I'm talking about a personal and a family level. So great idea coming up. It's the holidays time. None of us are traveling. None of us are going away, unfortunately. Talk about what are you doing with your family or your friends during the holiday time. Why not think about doing a Kits for a Cause event for a local charity in your living room to be grateful? Gratitude is something that we all have to practice. And again, for as little as building a $5 hygiene kit, the investment can be really small or as big and customizable to your family and to your cause. And it can be adaptable to anybody on this call. So we want to be a tool in everybody's toolbox to be called upon. When Kathy gets a big donor in and gets a 6-figure check and they say, listen, but we want to do something from the receptionist to the C-suite. Do you have something for us? She goes, yes, I do. She opens up her toolbox and she says, I'm going to introduce you to Lauren Ott at Kits for a Cause. And she tells Lauren, I'm going to give you X amount of percentage of that donation. Do what you do best, engage those people so they're going to come back to me for a 5-year plan perhaps. So we work together to engage the people, make them have an awesome opportunity and say, Kathy, what do you need? If Kathy says, I want them for 5 or 10 years, and we talk to them about that. You had such a great time at our event. Why don't you do it every year? And why don't you call it the XYZ program of their name? So it's about all of us helping out each other and listening and then reacting and customizing something.
And I can't stress the need. I think all the nonprofits can also say that something like this makes a huge, huge, huge difference, especially this year when, again, I'm not getting as many corporate groups coming together. So every time I actually hear from Lauren, I am absolutely thrilled because it literally, we've got hundreds, thousands of people who are looking for just a little help to get them through. And so we really, I can say that for sure that we really and truly appreciate it.
And it's the little things like people, it's incredible. Lauren and I, every day we say like, we've got the best jobs in the world because we get called from a 14-year-old kid who says, I've decided to donate my Christmas money this year. Me and my friends want to build kits. Can you help us? And they'll call with $100. And then we'll say, go get a GoFundMe, use Instagram, use Snapchat. And all of a sudden they come back, they said, we got $800. Oh my gosh, we can help. And sometimes we call people like Kathy and she says, oh my gosh, you're getting us too many donations. But so-and-so down the street charity may need some of those too, because space is always an issue too. So, I mean, great problems to have, right? But we're inspiring people in schools, churches, faith-based organizations, people's living room. It's a very different scenario now. And companies, the really great thing also, none of us mentioned Christmas parties. In the last 2-3 weeks, Lauren, we have had a tremendous amount of people saying, I'm with a company, we usually do this. We've decided to donate our money to do something. And they call Lauren and I and say, who needs help? So if you're a charity and Lauren doesn't know about you, she's not going to think about you. Kathy calls her all here. This is what I need, Lauren. Get it for me. We are great. It's all about communication, not just to your donors, but to people like us so that we can pitch for you. We're your external partner. That's what we want to do and help all of you so that you can take all the money you raise and put it into programs, things that you need for expansion, not stuff.
Yeah. And I think why there has been so much success, especially now in COVID, is that this idea of this year has been a year of impact in both positive and negative ways. And it's also been a year of demanding transparency. And so I think in terms of what we're looking at for future donors, and Kathy mentioned in how are we creating this legacy piece that we can kickstart younger donors to join in, to be ambassadors, to become champions, to become forever donors within the organization. It's that transparency piece. If someone can order an Uber, they can order a pizza and see exactly when it goes into the oven or know when their car is right out front, why can't they see where the dollars are going? And so it's a great way to get that foot in the door. It's a great way to help share what your program serves, to physically feel, see, touch the items, pack them into the kits, donate them. But at the end of the day, our goal as a social enterprise, because we're a social enterprise, we're not a charity, We're not looking to steal your donors, but instead we're looking to support you, because the last thing we want is you calling up our wholesale side of the business and spending your budget, spending your donor dollars on socks or underwear. We want that money to become a more innovative program to serve the hundreds of thousands of people that are now have been thrust into the system, and unfortunately will be left to the wayside unless we find more strategic and innovative ways to serve more people. So we're constantly looking for ways to create more impact. And so we work one-on-one with our charitable partners, as well as one-on-one with our donors, to ensure that everyone is getting the best engagement possible from the very get-go. So we're so excited. And there's so much opportunity because there's so much need, but also there's so much interest in doing good. So that's the good news, is that people want to do good, but they just don't know where to get started.
That's great. That feels like a perfect place for us to end off today. I want to thank the three of you so much for being here today and bringing the energy to our last panel. It's super dynamic, and that's amazing. And I would really, really encourage all of our audience members to please reach out to Jody, Lauren, and Kathy with any questions that you might have about the work that they're doing. So thank you so much. And I just have a few wrap-up announcements for the audience members, because we are concluding our 13th annual Foundation Endowment and Not-for-Profit Virtual Summit. So thank you so much for being here. I hope that you all learned as much as I did. Thank you to our participants, to our speakers, and to our sponsors. It's been an amazing 2 days. Please remember that all of the content from the last 2 days is going to be available on the platform for the next 3 months. You can revisit it at any time. Thank you to the Strategy Institute for organizing and for having me. It was a great event to host. Please head over to the networking lounge now. This is your final networking opportunity. And remember, you want to be using Chrome, and disable any VPNs or firewalls if you want to join the networking lounge. I hope to see some of you there. Thank you to everyone, and I hope to connect soon. Have a great evening. Bye.